What we need to discuss now is state machine and UiPath RE framework, right? UiPath RE framework is based on state machine. So let's quickly look at how state machine works, right? And then we'll move to the RE framework template and I'll help you to explain what are the different states of RE framework, how a transition happens from one state to another state, what is the entry, exit, and the transition states are, right? And then what need to be done at which workflow. That's the agenda we are planning for today. And then we'll have an assignment and a complete project demo, right? Which will use the RE framework to process the information one by one as a transaction and complete the task into a system. So for that, what we will do is we'll use the UiPath advanced certification example that has been given. So I'll give you that project, complete project code. If time will permit, I'll go through that today. Otherwise, we'll start from the same RE framework explanation using the project in the next class. All right. So let's quickly start. So what is a state machine? A state machine uses a concept of theory of automata, right? Theory of automata. You must have read that book into your graduation days, right? So you have a state machine. A state machine uses a finite number of set in its execution. It can go into a state when it is triggered by an activity. It exists the state when another activity is triggered. Another important point of the state machine is transaction. They enable you to add condition based on which transaction jump from one state to another state. These are represented by arrow or branches between the state. There are three activities specific to the state machine. They are state, final state, right, and the state machine. That you can see the right side of the image. So when you filter on the basis of state machine, you'll identify these three activities are available. The state activity consists of these sections: entry, exit, and transition. While the final state will only contain the entry. So that is the difference between state and final state. And that's quite obvious because final state would be end point. So there will not be any exit. By default, it's an exit point, right? How we should be able to use that in a UiPath Studio? Let's quickly look at that. So for that, what I'll do, I'll go to the start and create a new process. Let's say state machine. Okay. When you do this, what you need to do is in the main workflow, right? When you filter here state, so you will see this is state machine. The first thing that you need to drop is state machine. And when you drop a state machine, there will be a start, right? And in the next that you need to do is you need to define another state which is coming from this one, right? And then at the end, what you can define is a final state. Or what you can do is also, let's take another, state. Let's take this state. And from this state, let's take another state here. I'm just, I'm trying to explain you here is how navigation or how a control go from one state to another state, right? So basically, the arrow that you look here, T1, T2, T3, these are the transition T4 is the transition stage, right? So first thing that you need to do is bring a state machine. The moment you bring a state machine, it will contains a start node, and from the start node you should be able to define the states. So one state, another state, then another state, and then a final state. Final states do not have exit criteria. So how you should be able to do it? The moment you do, now you need to click on this one. So when you click on state, it will, showcase you the entry and exit. So whatever the task that you need to do, you can drop that here, or you can drop that here. And then you have transactions. So if something happens, you need to move to next stage, right? You need to move to. So if T1 happens, you need to go to the final state. If T2 happens, you need to go to the next stage. So let's quickly go back here and change this name to something else. Say T2, T3, T1.
So this will have to be somewhere like you get confused with transition.
Yeah, that's perfect. So let's say S1. That would be much better, right? Let's say S2, and then say S3, right? And then we have a final state. So we have T1, T2, T3, T4, and we have S1, S2, S3, right? Now when you click one, so you can see when T1 will happen, it will go to the final state. And if T2 will happen, it will go to S2. So that's how transition. And when you click on transition, you should be able to define a condition here. So on the basis of condition, it will move to the next step. So that's the only thing that you need to remember now, right? And then when we look at RE framework, I'll explain you how to define the condition and all those things. Just keep in mind, for a state machine to work, there will be a start node. For a state machine to work, there will be a final state. And then there will be other states. Transition from one state to another state will happen based on some transaction, right? Or transaction is nothing but a certain set of condition that has to happen, right? So if something has happened, say for example in S1, you want to read an Excel file and you are able to read it. That means it contains data. So what you can do in a transaction which is T2, you should be able to define if data table dot rows dot count is greater than 0, move to state 2, or if it is not 0, move to final state. So those kind of things you should be able to configure, and how you should be able to configure by clicking on the transition and defining these conditions. Additionally, you should be able to define some action if you want to put log messages or perform certain action. So this we'll see in detail in RE framework template. So I just wanted to explain you the concept of states, transactions, then we have entry and exit, blocks and transactions. And similarly, when you go to the final state, you will see only entry, no exit, no transition. And that's quite obvious because when the control will reach here, it will stop automatically. There should not be a definite condition to stop a bot. So it's a final state. Now, can we define multiple final state inside a state machine? Should I be able to drop it here? So yes, we can define multiple final state as well. But a start would be only one, but end could be multiple, right? And that's quite obvious. Got it? So this is the basic concept of how a state works, right?
So for each state, we can have multiple final states.
Yeah.
States.
It could be. Take example of flowchart, right? What you do in a flowchart? So in the flowchart you have one start, right? But it could end up into a different situation, right? It could end up into a situation when you need to call operator or you need to stop a bot. So calling operator is a final state, or calling stopping a bot could be a final step. So there could be a two things. So it all depends how you want to define where you want to stop a bot or exit from the process automation. Usually people get confused that why we can have two multiple exit. We can have multiple exit, right? We can have multiple exit. That's not a problem. All right, so let's close this one. Okay, and I just wanted to make you aware on the concept first, and then we'll use the state machine to take up a practical example as well. So don't worry if I haven't shown you how to define entry, exit, and condition and all those things. I just wanted to make you aware about what is state, what is final state, what is entry, exit, and transition. And if you understand this, we should be able to move next slide. Right. So let's move to the next slide. Let's talk about UiPath RE framework. Okay. This is 100% guaranteed interview question. There will be a question coming from this slide in any interview if you go for RPA developer. What could be the interview questions? So we'll cover those. So first thing that they can ask is, what is RE framework? So RE framework is nothing but a template designed by UiPath expert so that automation workflow can work in a modular approach for a large scale deployment. At high level, it follows all the best practices of exception handling. It provides you a retry mechanism, application recovery, and ability to stop a process when bot is failing more than it's doing good. It's also enable you to segregate the config assets away from the code. That means you should be able to control the config file outside the code. So you should be able to store the code in a workflow, but all the config required to run the bot into a file called config.xls. And then you should be also able to use the orchestrator asset instead using the hard-coded values, for example, shared network path, credentials, application URL, email addresses, and all those kind of things. So that's the beauty of RE framework. We call it RE framework, but this is not a framework. This is a template, a studio template of designing a project in a certain way. What would be the benefit of it? What are the benefit? What are the advantages of this? Right? First thing is that exception logging mechanism to process and monitor the bot is handled. Other thing is that we should be able to scale the bot in such a way that we should be able to retry a failed transaction multiple times and send out a exception notification. Scalability, a retry mechanism. Then consistency. It also enforces you to design a bot in such a way that it's easy to understand and the code standards are followed so that it will allow other developer to also understand what is being done, right? Different developer have different way to designing a bot. I can design a bot in my way. You can design a bot in your way, right? But as you grow, you design lot complex bots, it will become difficult to understand the other code. Why that person has written certain thing in this workflow, or why this person has developed a bot in such a modular way. So to make a standard that can be used by every other developer, RE framework was created. So if I understand how RE framework works, I should be able to understand the code written by other developers, right? So there would be a consistency and you will be forced to follow the way in which code has to be written, right? And it will elevate the pain to understand the code which is written by the others. So that's the other benefit. Reusability, again, in the RE framework, a special focus has been given to segregate the business logic from the application logic. So all the codes which are required for application opening, closing, navigating to application has to be separated. And the one which is doing the core business has to be completed in the process transaction stage. Error screenshot is another feature. RE framework has a functionality to take a screenshot whenever it is failed, which is useful in unattended automation and overall troubleshooting. Reason being, you are not looking at the screen in unattended mode. It's running into some VM or virtual machine in an orchestrator, and you don't understand, looking at the log, what exactly went wrong on that screen, why it is not able to click on that button. It may be the page has not appeared. It may be, page has appeared, but that button was not there. It may be that, network issue or those kind of things. So in those scenario, error screenshot is really, really useful. Now, this UiPath RE framework template uses the concept of state machine. So if you look at the diagram that is shown here, it uses the concept of state machine. So we have a state called initialization. We have a state called get transaction. We have a state called process transaction. And then we have a final state called end process. Right? So we have initialization, get transaction data, process transaction data, and end process. So these are the 4 states. Init state, we simply call it. So people will ask you, what is the init state? What is the get transaction data state? What is process transaction state? And what is end process state? So basically there are 4 states. And then there are transitions. What are the transition? Transition could be a system exception or a successful. So in the init state, there could be 2 transitions. If bot is able to read the configuration file successfully, it's successful, it will move to the get transaction data stage. And if there are system exception, it will stop the bot. Say for example, config file itself is being not read by the bot. Bot is not able to read the config file. So if config file is not, reading config file is not completed, you can't move ahead, right? That's the reason from system exception it's going directly to end state. Then you have a get transaction state. So in get transaction state, what could be the scenario? We could have 2 scenarios. You have data or you don't have data, right? So if you have data, you have to process that, right? So whenever there is a new transaction data, that is a new, transition state. When you have a new transaction data, you will process that into the applications using the business logic. Or if you have no data, you will stop a bot again. So bot will go to end process, or if there is any data, it will go to process transaction. You understand this? Now, in the process transaction state, we could have 3 transitions, right? One, the data that we have received from get transaction data is completed successfully into the application. And second could be failure. Now the failure could be further divided into 2 parts. Whether it's a business exception or application exception, or simply we call it system exception. So if it is a business exception, that means there is something incorrect with data and we need to move next data set. Or there could be issue with the application itself. So if there is an issue with the application, different approach has to be followed, right? So you will see that whenever there is a system exception, control is going back to init state. That means it need to initialize the application again. So if there is a system exception, control will go back to init. But if there is a business exception, control will go back to get transaction data. And if it is a success, then also the control will go back to the get transaction data for the next step or a next transaction item. We can control the flow, how many times it will go back to get transaction data and init data. That's basically on the retry mechanism. So we can put a retry mechanism configuration in RE framework. We can put a retry mechanism in UiPath queues as well, when we are using UiPath RE framework with queues. When this RE framework was initially created, it is taken care with the help of queues mechanism. That's how it is designed. But this RE framework can be configured, modified, or changed to work with data tables, Excel file, emails, or data coming from some XYZ third-party source as well. By default, when you download a RE framework or you use a RE framework in UiPath Studio, it will contains default setting to work with queues. And if you want to work with data table, you need to make certain adjustment into it. You need to change the data types of variables. You need to change some of the config values so that you should work with the emails or Excel file. We'll talk about those as well, because we'll see a couple of examples on RE framework, right? Anything you are not able to understand on the high level design of RE framework before I go and discuss about what is being done in each state? You able to understand init state, get transaction data, in process and process transaction. These are 4 states, right? Any doubt here? Good. Should I move to? Yeah, please. Someone was asking something.
Yeah, good suggestion.
Yeah, good. Okay. So let's move to the next step. I mean, let's look at what is being done in which state. So the diagram that you see here is a logical representation of the state machine that I have shown you in the previous slide, right? So we have init state. If we have success, we'll go to the get transaction. In the get transaction, we have new data or no data. So if we have new data, we'll go to the process transaction and complete it. If there is no data, we'll go back to, end state. So that's how it has been defined. Now in the process transaction, we could have system error, or system error is written, twice. That's a, typing mistake. So you could, say that as system error or business error as well. So in the case of that, it will move to the next point. Now, these are the workflow which are available into the RE framework, and UiPath teams keep changing it. So previously there used to be a get app credential, which is now been removed, so not available in the latest release. But let's look at this workflow one by one by going into UiPath Studio, right? Because they might have changed. Okay, so let's quickly stop the presentation and go to the UiPath Studio and see how we should be able to create a project using RE framework. Okay, so let me launch the UiPath Studio again. Okay. And then I need to go to template, or templates are also here. So you should be able to select this RE framework from here. And let's create it. Okay. So the moment you create, you will see this state machine diagram. So it's the same that I have shown you. The same thing, right? Now each of these state, if you now let's open this state. So in this state, in the entry, what we are doing, we have included a try catch block that is used to read the data from the Excel file. And then in the exit, we don't have anything. It's in a try and catch block. That's the reason it is here. And then we have transitions. So we have transitions here, though we have One transaction is successful, another transaction is system exception. So if it is success, it will go to get transaction data. If there is a system exception, failure during the initialization, it will go to the end process. So let's click on this one, successful. So what is successful? When if system exception is nothing, so we have defined a variable called system exception, and every time a system exception will occur, we'll set it as true. So if there is no system exception, that means default transaction is fixed and there is no error during the initialization. Or if there is system exception, that means something has went wrong, it will print that log message and it will end the process. Okay, so this is how you define the transition, and this is how you define the entry and exit and activities. So you should be able to drag and drop the activity which is required here. Now, before discussing more detail about all of these states, let's quickly look at the data folders or folders we have in RE framework. So we have a folder called, these are hidden and temporary folders, so you don't need to worry about these screenshot settings and TMH. The folder which is important is data. So in the data we have input, output and temp, and then we have config file. It is not necessary to keep the data into the same folder where your code is. So what we should be able to do is, we should be able to define this config file somewhere else in a network location or a share location, and from there we should be able to read it. For that we need to perform a modification, and in the init state we need to tell that you need to fetch the information from so and so location. Let's quickly look at the config file. Try to understand what is there in config file. Okay, so in the config file we have three tabs. One is called settings, another one is constant, and third one is assets. As I told you, by default this RE framework is designed to work with queues, and that's the reason you will see the setting available for the queues. So we have a queue name here, and then folder by default is blank. That means it can take data from shared folder if there is no access control mechanism is set. And then this is a log field, which is nothing but a name of the business process. As I told you, the other benefit of RE framework is to standard logging fields, right? So that we should be able to print or visualize some meaningful data out of log, and that's the reason these fields are defined. You will see more fields in the constant. So these are also log message and log fields are there. You should be able to change these. So what you need to do is, basically we'll read this file as a dictionary, right? So it will become into key value pair. So whatever the value it is here, you should be able to change it, but you won't be able to change these. If you want to change this, you need to modify the RE framework as well with a new modification, or you should be able to add new variable with values and what that variable is doing. So you should be able to define those. You should be able to define value here or here or here. Everything that you define here will go into a dictionary called config, right? But they are separated here just to make it more readable, right? So all the settings will come here. All the constants that you do not want to change again and again will go here. And then whatever the assets that you are using in the UiPath orchestrator, you should be able to use it here, right? This is really useful because you need to change the config value multiple times, right? So what you can do is, you can define multiple assets in the orchestrator. You can give them a name, asset 1, asset 2, asset 3, asset 4, right? And in the orchestrator, and here you can say application asset. So by changing the asset value, you should be able to launch the application with the multiple asset, right? Say for example, you have different login credential and you want to test how it works with the manager login, how it works with supervisor login, how it works with the administrator login. So you can create multiple assets, and then you should be able to change the asset value here so that different assets can be used to launch application. So that's a pretty much basic information about the config file. Okay. Now we have some other folder. So any data that you want to process should be kept here. Any data should be processed should be kept here, those kind. And this is not a really hard and fast rule. We should be able to configure input, output, data, config as many as folder we want to, and we should be able to configure it. They have given this way. I personally don't like keeping the data into the RE framework folder. I usually keep this data folder itself outside to some SharePoint location so that it could be separated from the code. And that's what UiPath also suggests. But for the sake of simplicity demonstration, they have kept it here. Then you have a documentation. This is a RE framework documentation, and this is really good. So I'll suggest you guys to go through this documentation, try to understand the detail of each steps. I'll share in a group, as well. So that's the reason I saved it. This contains detail of all the workflows, what actually they are doing, what is happening in init stage, what is happening in all those states and everything. So it contains a long, it's a pretty big document. And RE framework is a, it's not something that we can complete in a 1 hour. You need to understand granularity of each, workflow, each state, why it has been done in such a way, those kind of thing. So this is really a big document, and I'll try, to cover as much I can cover, but I'll suggest you guys to go through these document at least 2 times, because you won't be able to understand everything in a once. So go through this document multiple times. Okay. So this is a documentation folder. Then whatever the errors, screen will be captured, will be kept here. And then in the framework, we have these many reusable files. Previously, there used to be a process.yaml file here, but it's now missing. So if you look at my PPT, I am saying that there should be a process transaction file, but it's not there now. It has been moved into the latest edition. So let's talk about what is being done in which state. And this you need to remember. And I'll give you examples where you can use that and what all things you can put into it, right? So let's first talk about init state, or we call it initialize process as well. This init state is used to read and store config data into dictionary. It closes all the unnecessary application and open the required application. You can configure any additional steps that you need to initialize for your application, such as profile, creating a folder, creating a date-wise folder, and all those kind of things. You have to do it here. So in the init state, you will get config file, assets, folder state, folder structure, any other config and asset. So basically the diagram that is shown here, it gives you representation, what input would be required, what init state will be doing, and where it will move next, right? So in the init state, you will require config file, asset details, folder structure, or any other config and assets. It will read the config file, close all application if they are already open, initialize any setting, folder structure, say for example date-wise folder has to be created, and open all required application if multiple application has to be used. For example, if in a process we need to upload an attachment in a SAP, we first require bot to fetch the credential from the orchestrator, right? That would be the first step. Then we have to open a SAP application and then log in to the SAP application using the credential, right? So the best part of UiPath RE framework is it is built in such a way that you can initialize all the applications and necessary here in initialize application workflow in the init state. And if the condition you have built in the met, bot will move forward to the next transaction state. and if there are error while initialization, the application or config file or credentials are invalid, exception notification has to be sent and bot should stop. So let's try to see how this can be done in UiPath Studio. Okay, so let's launch it here. In the init state, you will see this, and then here you have load configuration file. So we have a global variable here where we are setting system exception is nothing, and then we have if config is nothing, right? So basically this is for the first run, so that if we need to go back to init stage multiple time during the run, it will read the config file only first time, not the second time. So if it will come second time, it will go into the else block and it will do nothing. So it will print the screen resolution. This is a really newly introduced step. Previously it was not there. So now it is printing the screen resolution. It's in 21.10. You won't find this into 20.4 and all those things. This is a new state. And then we call init all setting.yaml file, which is in the framework. So let's open that workflow and see what is being done there. So we initialize all the setting. So anything that you need to do for initializing a setting, you need to write here. You need to write here in this. So what I can do here is, say for example, if I need to work on, let's minimize this just to, help you to understand how you should be able to do it. So say for example, I need to create some folders. So what I'll do, I'll create required folders here, right? Or if I need to read some different setting, say for example, we are using 2 files, or maybe putting some other detail, any other detail that's a which you think that as a configurable, so you should be able to put those detail here, right? Say for example, reading the status of last run, right? So you should be able to put it here. Then after this, once the init setting has been called, and then these are basically workaround so that it can work with the queues which are defined in the prior additions. So this is a workaround. This is a patch fixed given by UiPath. Then you have kill all application workflow for the first run. So then it will call kill all process, and here it will kill everything. So say for example, if you want to automate a process which execute and work with the SAP and other applications, so you have to close that SAP, Excel, or any other application you want to close. You have to close those all application here, all application. Here. So all application has to be closed. Then once that application has been closed, it will add that login fields, right? That's for reporting purpose. So if you see the collection here, the log fields that we define into the config. So it's reading the data from config and putting that into this variable so that it can be used globally inside this project. So that's a log field. And then if max consecutive system exception exceeded, so this is again a new step that has been added by UiPath. Previously it is not there. So what will happen, say for example, system is down, right? And you have 10 items in a queue. When first item is picked, it has failed due to application error. Second item is picked, failed due to application error. Third item is picked, failed due to application error. So if there are consecutive system exception, you don't want to run your bot. So you need to stop the bot. So for that, this newly introduced, block has been added. So it will control that. And once that is done, once you read the config, close all existing application, then you will launch all the applications. So there is another workflow which is called init all application, and there you need to write a logic to launch your application. So you will launch SAP here. Say for example, we are taking example of SAP application. So SAP launch here. So all the activity that is required, say for example, SAP based activity. So if you want to launch that, you should be able to use the SAP login and all those things here in this workflow itself, right? So this way you should be able to design your init workflow. Let's delete it. We do not want to disturb the workflow. So this is all about init stage. Any doubt here, guys? Any doubt in init stage? So in the init state, we have read configuration, close open application, initialize any settings and folder structure, and open all required applications. So these are the 4 tasks we do. Any doubt here before I move to the next state? Should I move to next state? All right. So the next state is get transaction data. Once you complete the init state, you will have a dictionary which will contains all the data. So you will have in config, and then you have all the applications are open. Now what you need to do here is you need data that has to be processed. So if data is a data retrieval state, which is used to get a transaction from queues or data table or folder or database or any other sources. Once your bot is successfully initialized and all the application which is required for your process is already open, all you need to do is fetch the required information from the queue to process. RE framework pre-built functionality looks for a stop request and will stop request. These are items still in the queue for to the process, right? In this state, you will have 2 possibilities. As I explained you earlier, if a new data is retrieved, there is a data to be processed, or if there is no data to be processed. So if there is a data to be processed, it will move to the process transaction state, and if there is no data to be processed, it will go to end process state, right? So let's go back to UiPath Studio again and see what will happen. So here in the get transaction data, it will come here in this part. This is the stop signal. That's basically when you want to kill a bot from UiPath Studio, it checks for the kill signal. So if the kill signal is coming, which is coming from here, just wanted to explain you. So if you go on dev orchestrator, and process, and say for example if jobs, so when you go and start a job, say for example, and run it, and then there would be option of kill and stop, right? So this will send a signal to your bot, and these are being catched in here. So if there is a should stop signal, it will stop here. Okay, so if there is a stop signal, it will stop here. Otherwise, what it will do, it will read the data using the get transaction data XAML file, which is nothing but here. So we'll open this one. Let's close other, just not to confuse. Okay, so now we are in get transaction data. So in the get transaction data, what we'll do, we'll get transaction data from the, by default it is configured to use a queue. You can see it's using a queue mechanism, and the data will be stored in a out transaction item. This is a nothing but a get queue item that we have seen in the yesterday example. You remember we use this get queue item, and data will be stored into out transaction item, right? So this is the same activity which is used. Now by default it's supporting queue. So if you want to read data from Excel file, right, so you need to build your own logic here. It will not work this way, right? For sake of simplicity, let's continue our example with the queues, right? I'll showcase you how I can read the data that I have created in a queue yesterday. Okay, so let's move to this. So if there is data, then it will print the detail of transaction and add some fields, now, that, and all those things, right? And it will move to the next state, like that is shown here. So if you have data, I mean new transaction data is there, it will move to the process transaction state. So in the process transaction state, first thing that you do is use a business exception is equal to nothing. That's a global variable. And then you have framework process.yaml file, and there you need to perform the action. So whatever the task, whatever the automation that you need to build it here. Say for example, if you are using a SAP application, so what you need to do, you need to create a separate folder. Say for example, SAP, right? And in the SAP, you can create all your workflows like upload document, okay, and create here, okay. And you need to write the logic into this workflow, and you need to use arguments, you need to use variables and everything. And then in this process, you need to bring this. So you don't need to write sequence here. In the process block, you should use only the workflow which is already written. So this way you are doing two things. One, you are creating a snapshot of a process in a single page, so that by looking at this page or workflow, you will be able to understand what your bot is doing. And second, you're also modularizing your code for small functions of different part of application or processing, so that if there is a change required, they can be easily maintained and changed outside the process workflow, right? So we should be able to define whatever the business logic we need to write in a different workflow, and we need to invoke it here, right? For our use case, right, we have this. So this is the process, right? In this process transaction state, this will be called, and once that process will call, it will call the set transaction status.yaml, right? Let's open this one. Okay, this is really important, and most of the interview question will come from here, right? So what will happen here is your process will either fail due to system exception or due to a business exception, or it will be a success. So if it is a success, it will go here. If it is a failure, it will come here. It will check if there is a business exception. If there is a business exception, increment the transaction index. So it will move to the next item. And if there is a system failure, it will not move to the next item, and it will go and retry if there is a retry capability in a queue. If there is not there, it will move to the next transaction. It will go to the initial state and retry it, or it will stop. So that's based on the how you have configured the bot. So this is really important to understand, right? And what is happening here is we are using a concept of set transaction status, and this is the same activity that we have used yesterday. Set transaction status. In the collection, in the output, we are setting nothing. In analytics, we are setting nothing. In we are giving the queue name which is coming from the config, and then we are setting error type as an application, and that's all. So if it is a failure or success, so we are setting that way. If it is a success, we are again setting a transaction status as success, right? A successful. Okay, and you should be able to put all information here. So it's the same thing that we did yesterday. So let's quickly do two things here, right? First thing is that we need to modify the config file to use the queues that we have designed yesterday. Okay, so we have this queue, and we have created a queue yesterday. So let's look at this queue. And what we can do is we can use this queue number 2. So I'll copy this queue name, put into the config file so that, and save it. So the only thing that I need to change is this one. The rest other things will work as it is. Okay. Save. No, not this. I don't need to save this one. Don't save. Okay. Now go back here and come into the process. So we have configured this, port here to work with the process. So I don't need to call this because I am not using. What we can do is in the argument we have in transaction item, right? So let's print just log message here and say info, and then in transaction item dot specific content like we did yesterday, right? And then let's print account. Okay, and probably we can print it into toString, reason being it has to be printed in string. And let's just say log message account updated. This is the process would not be as easy like this, but we just wanted to demonstrate the working of the RE framework. So it will come here, it will get a queue item, right? And from the queue item it will read this account information, perform some task here, and once it will perform some task, it will move to the next stage, which is nothing but here, like success, failure, and all those things, update the status into the queue, and so on. It will continue to work. So let's quickly run this bot. Okay, let's make sure that config file is closed, and now let's run this bot. So running this bot. You can see these log messages, reason being the activity was highlighted, and that's the reason. So it's getting the transaction item. Now it has get the transaction item, it has put the transaction item as success, move to the next step. Let me slow it just to so that you will see what exactly it is happening, right? So it's setting the transaction status. It's incrementing the transaction number to next, setting the transaction, okay, and then it will again come here, get the transaction data. There is data in the queue, so it will get a queue item, right? It will print this additional log messages, then it will go to the process transaction state, and it will process it. So it will print that log account number. You can see that log account number has been printed there, and account is updated, and it has set the status as a step, and it will keep continue working till the item in the queue is exhausted, right? So let me stop it. Okay, and now let's go back to the queue. Sorry, not this. Let's go to the queue and now view the transactions. So you should be able to see this item has been successful, right? Right? Few seconds ago, it was created yesterday and few seconds ago. So what I'm trying to explain here is to work with queue, all you need to do is you need to change the queue name. But if you want to work with other type of input like Excel, or email, you need to modify the RE framework. Right? Any doubt here, guys, on this point?
I think,
Hmm?
is there any mechanism like in RE framework to like fetch queue items from queue having like status other than new? Like we can also fetch in progress or successful items later.
No. By default, it takes care of only status which is as new. You should be able to, create some filter conditions. That's a good question. So let me explain you here. So when you get transaction data, let me close other, not to confuse. Okay. So when you go here and when you call this get transaction item, which is nothing but there. So here you have a filter strategy, right? So here you have filter strategy. So you have only filter strategy start with an equal, right? And that's basically on the reference. So what you should be able to do is you can create a filter strategy if reference starts with ln. So it will only fetch those queue item where reference start with something. That's
like regardless of status.
Only new, not regardless of
Okay,
status.
Okay. So
Only new.
Cannot retain these failed ones or successful ones.
No, there is a way of doing it. So basically what we do, say for example, this is failed one, right? So what you can do is you can click on clone. So you will copy this transaction as a new item, and then when you clone it, a new will be created. It will ask, and you should be able to change the dates and everything and create a queue item. So it will create it can't create because the transaction items should not be same. So if I yeah, so you should be able to clone it. Or what you can do is, say for example, if it has failed, right? So you should be able to retry item. So when you click on retry, a new item would be created which having the same reference number. So I don't know if I can sort it. But you will see that a new item has been created with the same reference number. Where it is? I think ideally it should be the deadline. It's not a, there should be something. I don't know how to filter it, but let's look at it. But there is I need to look at that, man. There is a way you can click on retry item, and then a clone of queue item will be created, right? And let's take example of three. Oh, that's here. See here. For this item you have created.
I think you can click on this started ended column.
Yeah. No, it's here. It's here.
Yes, it is. Yes.
It's here, right? So the moment you retry, a new item will be created. So basically in the workflow, you need to tell if you want to retry that, you should be able to do it, right? This way. All right. Any other question, guys?
Yes, one more question. Actually, it was asked to me by interviewer. Like, suppose there are 60 items added to the queue, and 12 transaction items got processed successfully, but rest failed. So now, when the process is re-executed to add items in the queue, then how can we avoid addition of those successfully processed items? So it is basically the reference, right? When he asked me that, how can we avoid addition of those successfully processed items again if the process is re-executed to add those items?
Okay. So for that you need to build a logic in your workflow. So could you please, sorry, a lot of background noise. Yeah. Let me mute you. Okay. So what you need to do is, see here, it's pretty simple, right? You can able to perform only the default activity which are given here, right? Anything you want to do additionally, you need to use the combinations of these, right, to identify it. So what you can do is using this get queue items, right? You should be able to get that item from queue itself. So let's take example. I'll create a new workflow. So when you click it, before adding a queue item, use this get queue items, passing the same reference number that you want to create. If it returns a queue item, that means that item is already there, right?
Yes.
So you have to skip that and move to the next. That's how we can do. So basically you are checking for a duplication in your workflow. You have to check that that reference is there or not. If it is there, don't add it. If it is not there, add it, right? All right. Any other questions, guys, on RE framework, not on queues? You got the idea how we should be able to configure it and how it will move to the next step, right? RE framework is not a easy concept to understand in the one day. I'll tell you frankly. For me, it took a couple of days to understand how the workflow is going from one workflow to another workflow. So for that reason, what I'll say is you have to try your hands on this. Try using a debug method to see control is going from where to where, and debug is pretty useful. That's the reason, you should slow your steps, see how the execution is moving from one workflow to another workflow. That will give you concrete idea about the structuring of this. This is nothing but a code written by a different developer. So different developer has written in this way so that all the best practices can be incorporated in a one design, right? You may think that instead of doing like this, I can do other thing. But as I explained to you earlier, what will happen if you leave the organization? You have written such a complex code and you left the organization. The new developer will come and not be able to understand what you have written. So as a solution designer, as a solution architect, we enforce people to follow the same set of standard so that any new RPA developer coming in or anybody else who is looking at your code should be able to understand what exactly it is written, right? Got my point? All right, so let's quickly look at the slides and then we'll complete this session. So we already talked about get transaction data. In the get transaction data, we read queues or other source to get data for processing. I have shown you example of queues, how you should be able to read the information. Now, for processing with the queue, the only thing that you need to change is the queue name into the config file. You don't need to change anything. And then if you want to perform some actions in your application, you have to design those workflow as a separate and then include those workflow into the process.yaml file. And it will be done. You don't need to touch a code. That's how easy it is, right? But if you run into some issue, you need to understand the working of these things. And that's the reason you need to understand the behavior and different branching of each states, right? So for the from the get transaction, we'll move to the process transaction state. So in the process transaction state, as I explained you, the transactions are processed, which are fetched from the previous state. And if there is no record to process, the robot will automatically move to the next, which is in process state. Going back to our example of attaching a document to SAP, the bot has now initialized and the SAP application has been launched. We have launched that into init state. We got the transaction data from the queue. So we have data from the queues. Now what bot need to do? So bot should upload the attachment to SAP. So here in the process state, we will write only activities or include the workflows which are responsible for document to be uploaded. Any activity which is responsible for launching application will go into init application workflow. Any activity which is responsible for closing an application will go into close application or kill application, workflow, right? For example, if a workflow to check if the document exists or not into the share path, or a workflow with the activities like clicking on appropriate SAP element or GUI, the bot has to navigate through different SAP, right, screens, type in the file path, look for the confirmation that document is saved or not. Those things can be written into the process or a separate module workflow and included into process.yaml, right? But not other things. Try to segregate logic for the application and business into different workflow. Try to keep what all steps required for launching the application into init stage, steps which is responsible for closing application into kill or close application state. As I told you, RE framework has pre-built set transaction status workflow that can be used to set the transaction status of an item, either success or business exception or application exception. For example, let's take example of SAP example that I'm showing you, where you need to upload a document, right? When bot has encountered an unknown exception, either due to SAP application crashed or bot could not be able to look at the certain application it's supposed to do, right? In those scenario, it will be application error, right? Application error could be retried, right? Because it can retry to look for that particular element and retry the same transaction item to see if it is successful in a second retry. So you should be able to control the retry mechanism by controlling the config value into the config file. So it will retry multiple times. That's nothing but going into the same transaction state again if retry is enabled, right? If there are business exceptions, say for example, document that you are trying to upload do not contain the required information for that transaction item. So that's basically something to look by business, or that's not a valid scenario to upload. So in those cases, what you need to do? You need to move to the next set of data that need to be processed. So that's a business exception. So in the business exception, it will move to the next step. In the application state, it will move to the next step or retry based on the configuration. That's how it is, right? So you can remember the workflow: success, if success, transition is picked up. If you have no exception, type. If business exception, handle the business exception gracefully. If system exception, handle the system exception gracefully and perform the task. Next state is end process state. So in the end process state, this is the final state of RE framework that ends the bot successfully and closes all the application. There are scenario when you have to perform some reporting once bot has completed all the tasks. There are scenario when you need to perform archiving. There are scenario when you need to clean up the system, removing all the temporary files which are generated, right? All those cases has to be handled into end transaction state. UiPath is continuously adding the new feature and update to UiPath Studio. So keep eye on what is the latest new update, like the one that I have shown you in the studio, which is not present into my PPT, right? This is all about UiPath RE framework. Let's quickly go to the end transaction state and see how it is there. So we'll go to the main XAML file and then we'll go to the end process. And in the end process, what actually it is doing is close application. But if we want to perform some other activities like, cleaning up or archiving, so we should be able to write that here in this block. So you need to understand what is the use cases of all of these, right? So close is used for closing application. Get transaction is fetching the information from queue or Excel or email or any third-party tool. Init application is used for initializing or opening your application or moving your application in such a way that process can be triggered from that step. Init all setting is required to read the config values either from the config file or orchestrator assets. Kill all processes.xml. This is nothing but kill all applications. So basically using the terminate or process kill commands, you should be able to kill the processes, right? Then we have process.yml, which contains the core business logic. Everything that you need to write for an application has to be written separately, and they need to be invoked in the process.yml file. Retry count transaction is nothing but taking care of what is a retry count. If retry count exceeded the configured value, it should go to the next step. That's what it is. Then we have a set transaction status. As I have shown you in the example, we should be able to set the status of queue, either successful or failure. That's what it has been taken care. And then we have a workflow which takes the screenshot. So this basically, whenever there is a failure, we capture a screenshot and save into the folder location so that we understand what actually went wrong in the bot, right? Any doubt here, guys? With this, I am completing the RE framework overview. In the next class, on the next lesson, we will work on a live project which is given by UiPath Advanced Developer Certification. We need to go to their learning system, download the data, Excel data, create a queue item, and then process one item at a time using the system that is given by the UiPath. So that's a certification exam question. So there will be a questions coming from that concept. So that will take care. I also